All right, call to order, 5:30. Please rise. Pledge to the allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, good evening, everybody.
Almost made it on time.
All right, hey, you made it just in time. You didn't see Mr. Owens out there anywhere, did you?
I did not.
All right. Well, I'm about to start roll call, so that's perfect timing right there.
There we go.
Okay. Let me call roll real quick. Jaden Bailey.
Present.
Alan Stark.
Yes.
William Guschalk. I knew he was going to be out. Jeff Spink.
Here.
Doug Tysted.
Here.
Robert Owens may show up. Steve Skeet.
Here.
Dan Clemens.
Here.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Here.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Let the record show there'll be 7 here tonight for voting. If things stay the way they say, we won't need anybody to step out during the Board of Zoning. We still need one?
You're the 7th member of the game.
All right. All right. So did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? I'll take a motion for approval of minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Jaden. All right. All right, let me call roll. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Abstain. This is on.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. Carries 6. Okay. Secretary's report.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. On your agenda tonight, we have one item on the consent agenda, so once you approve the agenda, that will automatically be approved. We also have 6 class on your regular agenda, 1 rezone, so 1 public hearing, and then also please stay for the Board of Zoning Appeals because we have 2 variance requests on that agenda. Otherwise, that has nothing else for you.
All right. Thank you. Do I have any declarations? Okay. All right. Well, in that case, do I have a motion of approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second for the agenda. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. Total vote 7. Okay. Get organized here. Okay, we'll get started on 9 Alpha. Agenda item 9 Alpha in your packet. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV 24-076 and 077. This is a preliminary and final plat for Coke Acres as outlined in posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. Planning staff report.
Case DED 24-076 and 077, as mentioned, is a request to for preliminary and final plat approval of the property located at 24492 and 24510 Limit Road into 3 lots and 1 tract of land. Currently, there are 2 residents on these 2 parcels with various accessory structures. They are proposing to, like I mentioned, create 3 lots that would vary in size from, they would vary in size, however, they would all be in compliance with the RR5 zoning district, which is a minimum of 5 acres I believe they intend to sell that to an adjoining property owner who currently uses it for their driveway access. There is an exception that will be needed for lot depth to lot width for all three lots that are being created. Lots 1 and 2, because it does not meet the 1-to-4 ratio, and lot 3 because it does not meet the 1-to-1 ratio. It is a very uniquely shaped lot because of the bend of the road, which is, I believe, why the applicants are requesting this variance, but they did provide their request in writing to you for this exception. So again, if you are wanting to approve the exception, you need to motion for that first before you discuss the question. If you have any other questions, the applicant is in attendance tonight.
Okay. All right. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Joe Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Staff handled it very well. The exceptions, if the preliminary plat shows the contours and how steep this property is and the existing structures and ponds on the property. Right now it's a family division, and they are selling that north tract to the neighbor to the directly north, who has a structure up there and already accesses his property through their land. So it's going to clear that up, and you know, the uniqueness of the road doesn't help with the lot configurations.
So it kind of helps eliminate an easement of any kind that would be.
Yes, it resolves the easement problem going across somebody else's ground. And they already have 2 houses, and, you know, the third sibling wants theirs. And
Okay.
that's why we're doing this.
Questions for Mr. Herring?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Any additional information be presented?
The only other thing is there is an existing driveway that both houses use to access their properties. They would be crossing lot 3. Staff does recommend that they either place a private access easement prior to filing the plat, or they get a separate access point for lot 2 in order to fix that, so there's no potential access issues in the future.
Yeah, the big piece there is the future. That's the reason why we're saying, okay. Okay, so that would have to be done before
That's
final.
what staff are recommending as a condition of approval.
Okay, got it. Understand. Questions for staff? Council? Okay, any questions or comments from members of the commission? Okay, in that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception. And the exception is for case DEV 24-076 and 077, the preliminary and final plat.
I'll go ahead and do it. I hereby, the Planning Commission hereby approve the exception to Article 50, Section 40-3I, lot depth and width in conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for Koch Acres subdivision as submitted by the application based on the finding of all 3 criteria for the exception have been met.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you laying all that out for the exception. Okay, I'll do a roll call. I have a motion and a second. No discussion. I'll call roll. Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the plat as stated, case DEV 24-076 and 077, a final plat for Koch Acres as outlined in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve case number DEV 24-076 and
7-7, preliminary and final plat for Project Acres based on staff recommendations and the approval of the exception.
Second.
Dayton is a second. Thank you, sir. I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion on the final plat? All right. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Teisted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0, carried. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than September the 25th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Let's go to 9 Bravo on your agenda. 9 Bravo. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV 24-078, a preliminary plat for cottages at Whistle Creek as outlined in your posted agenda. This is not a public hearing. Staff planning report?
Case EB 24078 is a request to plat the property located at 12927 170th Street into a six lot, Yes, a 6-lot cross-access easement subdivision. Of course, this is only the preliminary plat. This is not the final plat at this time. This cross-access easement is accompanied by 3 exceptions requests. The first exception is the Section 50, Article 50, Section 43H, which is a non-conforming structure. If you look at the plat on, I believe it's Lot 2, there are two buildings that would encroach into the proposed building setback line that would be run adjacent to the cross-access easement. That is what that request is for. Those structures are pre-existing and they're requesting that they stay there, but they also need to have that building setback line in order to comply with our regulations. They did provide the narrative in the staff report for you guys to review. The second exception request is Article 50, Section 43.1, which is lot depth to lot width. That would be for the 4 eastern lots of this subdivision. As you can see, they are uniquely shaped to accommodate for the private drive that the applicant is proposing to route through this lot. So they do not meet the 1-to-1 ratio on any of them. So you guys will need to approve a request for that layout from lot depth to lot width. And then the last exception request is for utility easements. Our regulations currently require that a utility easement with a minimum width of 20 feet wide run along the rear property lines when there is not an adjacent road or alleyway. They are requesting an exception from that. In their narrative, they expressed a desire to minimize the visual appeal of utilities running along their property. They are proposing that the utilities for their subdivision would be routed through the private drive cross-access easement. We did request that Evergy look at this exception request as they would be the most likely affected by that exception. They responded with a request for more time to consider this because they wanted to ensure that it would not hinder their routing of their utilities for that general area. So as of this time, their request is for more time to review it. As far as the actual subdivision, as mentioned, this is a cross-access easement, so it would be a private drive subdivision to benefit all of these lots. In regards to the cross-access easement, it is in compliance with our regulations. They would just need to they would need approval of these 3 exceptions to go with the proposed plat as presented.
Okay, so I'm tracking there's 3 exceptions. 1, the non-conforming on the structure piece. 2, the lot width to lot depth piece. And then the last one is utility easement requirements. Right? Okay.
Those are the 3.
Okay. And we understand the Evergy is asking for additional time to relook before a final plot, correct? Before we go final on the...
If you guys, they want more time to consider it before they would give you any feedback as to the constraints it would put on their system.
Okay.
Should we table it then?
If they give any,
Their intent is they can supply power to subdivision, which is the requirement of the utility permits letter. Because of the size of the lots and its location, they may very well want to run transformers on the front side of the property just for access purposes. But to make that determination, they're going to take a little while longer to make that decision. It doesn't affect you on a preliminary plat because a preliminary plat does not subdivide property or dedicate right-of-ways or public easements.
Right.
That occurs at a final plat level. So if you grant the exception, that simply means that if they do decide to put it on the front side, they're not violating technical components of the regulatory code. They could very well put them on the front. You may very well see them on the back of the final plat. For staff, it's not a critical issue as long as utility easements are there. Whether in the back or whether they're in the front really is inconsequential. We just want to make sure that the utility provider can provide utilities there and that they have an opportunity to review the plats. They're working with their engineers right now to determine whether it will be on the rear or the front. They just need more time to accomplish that, and it certainly would be done for the final plat when the lots have been subdivided and utility easements are dedicated.
So we could go ahead with the preliminary piece to not slow roll it, to keep it going. Okay.
Within your authority to do so.
Because that's what I was looking at is staff recommendation is
Staff recommendation is approval with conditions if you approve the exceptions. Of course, we don't provide a recommendation on exceptions. That
Right.
is for you guys to consider.
right. Okay. I'm sorry. You had a question?
Nope. Answered it.
Oh, okay. All right. Applicant wish to speak? Joe, I know you love sitting in the back, but we're going to have to put you a chair right next to the podium.
I don't think John will appreciate that.
Yeah, speed things up, man.
Joe Herring Surveying, 315 North Fifth. Staff again did a great job explaining the uniqueness of this property. And if anybody's familiar with the southern part of the county down towards the Kansas Avenue or Kansas River and the rolling hills and the bluffs, that's where this property is. The setback exception, the buildings we originally submitted at 30-foot setback. The staff thought that it would be better to stay with the regulated 40-foot and ask for the exception. That's why that exception is there. With the depth, you can see the irregular shape of these tracks. That the road is basically going to follow a long-time trail through the property that they've developed, and you'll be able to drop houses off for kids in the future, and that's what their plan is. The utility easement, we have had conversation with Evergy, and we did place an additional 10-foot outside of the cross-access easement that wraps the road per their request for just to have it on paper that they are covered with an easement. And they are aware that it may change. Property owners are here. They are aware of that, and they're going to work with Evergy and grant the easement where they need it on the final plat. So it may not stay there, but it's basically where Evergy says, hey, here's where we need it. That's where they're going to have to work with them and determine, what trees stay and what doesn't and how that goes. But
Okay.
like I said, staff handled it and explained it quite well. So any questions? And property owners are here. I don't know if they're going to speak or not, or if you have any questions for them, but it is a family. This one is a family division of land. So.
Okay. Questions for Joe? Commission? Questions for Joe? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other additional information that needs to be presented? Covered it pretty well. Any questions from the commission? Members of the commission? Questions? All right.
You need three different motions.
3 different exceptions, sir. 3 different exceptions. No. 3 different exceptions.
You did a fine job, Steve.
Okay. So the first one is I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception.
Okay.
And that exception is the structure in conformance with the zoning and subdivision.
I move that we approve the exception for Article 50, Section 40.3H, non-conforming structure in conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations to the carriages at Whistle Creek subdivision as submitted in the application based on finding of all 3 criteria where the exception has been met.
Thank you. I have a
Second.
motion. Do I have a second? Dan, thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion on the exception? The first exception for the structure. All right, I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries 7-0. It's approved for the first exception.
I can do the second exception.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the second.
I can do it, you can do it.
Okay.
I found it.
Hereby approve, I move to approve the exception for Article 50, Section 40.3I, lot depth to lot width in conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the cottages of Whistle Creek subdivision as submitted by the application based on finding of all three criteria where the exception has been met.
Thank you, Steve. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. And a motion. Any discussion on the lot width depth exception? All right, call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
Let the record show the exception is carried. His approval 7-0. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for the third exception, which is the utility easement.
I move that we approve the exception for Article 50, Section 40.4A, utility easement requirements in conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the cottage of Whistle Creek subdivision submitted by the application based on finding of all three criteria of the exception has been met.
Thank you, Steve. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Wondering when you were going to speak. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the floor? This is the exception for the utility easement. No discussion. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
Let the record show the third exception, reference utility easement, is approved with a vote of 7-0. Give me just a second here. Catch up on my paperwork here. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the plat. The plat, reference DEV 24-078, a preliminary plat for cottages at Whistle Creek, as outlined in the posted agenda.
I'll do one more. I move that we approve case number DEV 24-078, the preliminary plat of cottages of Whistle Creek with staff recommendations and the three exceptions that were just passed.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jeff. I have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the final plat. Any discussion from the commission?
I'm concerned about the memo from the fire district as well as the rural water. Fire district noted that there need to be fire hydrants throughout the property, and yet only one of the plots will be on rural water, and the rest will be on well water. And so I would like to make certain before we do any final platting that the owners understand, as the letter says, that this could lead to a higher ISO rating for the division, which will affect insurance rates, and that they understand what's fixing to happen here. And also that the rural water, one of the other condition from the rural water was that they have to pay to connect.
Pay utility
Yeah.
unit price.
For the one lot that's going to be paid. And so I that concern, the piece about the fire hydrants, and as we look at what could potentially be a goat trail down in through there, I guess my question is, before we do a final plat, are there any plans to build a more standardized road down in there to get fire equipment down there? The fire district said that they would provide protection, but is the road going to be able to support the equipment?
If I may, so this is a cross-access easement, meaning it's a private drive development. With the preliminaries plat, they did not provide the engineered road plans that they won't have to per regulation, since it's 3 lots or greater. That will come with the final plat. So they have to provide engineered road plans showing how they will design their private drive.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought this was a final plat as well.
No, just preliminary.
It's just preliminary.
I'm sorry, I said final plat, didn't
You
I?
did.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Preliminary plat.
That
My bad.
That boogered me all up, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. I think I said final plat, and then I read it as preliminary plat when I read
Yeah,
it, but my bad.
And so we just need to make certain that we've got the road down in there, and that it will be able to handle the equipment should the fire district need to get in there. Because as you look at the terrain map, that's pretty rugged down in there. I mean, there's some pretty close contour lines, and so. That is a concern of mine. It does not affect my vote as of yet, but it could affect the vote on a final plat if my concerns are not met.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the conditions they have to meet as part of
Correct.
that's part of the motion, right?
I just want to make certain everybody.
Proposed conditions, and they have to meet those conditions. Yep. Okay. Joe, did you want to address anything else in that based on the discussion up here right now? Okay. All right. Okay.
That's all I have.
Good.
Mr.
That's good.
Chairman.
Good question. Thank you. Sorry about calling it a final plat. I read it as preliminary and still called it final. Well, you can see how fast I'm ready to move on with this, right? So they can start building some houses. Okay. All right. I have a motion and a second and a good discussion. I'll call roll at this time. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Adam Stork.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0. So preliminary plat, and we carried 3 exceptions on that one with a vote of 7-0. Okay. Don't get too excited. We're only on the 3rd case. We got 19 more to go. All right. 9, Charlie, on your agenda. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV 24-080 and 081, a preliminary and final plat for E&R Rolling Meadows North as outlined in the posted agenda. Once again, this is not a public hearing item. Staff planning report?
All right, DEV 24-080 and 081 is a request to replat the property at 00000 206th Street into a 3-lot subdivision. This property is located on 206th Street, which is a collector road. So they do have some shared accesses that they will be using to access all 3 lots. I believe 1 and 2 will be sharing one, and then the third will be sharing with an existing drive to the south that the same owner owns. The applicant is requesting an exception from the lot depth to lot width on lot 1. As you can see, it's a very lengthy parcel, so they obviously exceed the 1-to-4 ratio. They did provide a narrative for you guys to consider as part of your exception request. This parcel also has, as you can see, floodplain running through it, which is part of their request for the exception. We did verify that there is enough developable area on that lot 3, so they have at least an acre in area outside of the floodplain to accommodate a house and a septic system and accessory structures. As of right now, staff does recommend approval with conditions if you approve that exception, and of course we would ask that you make a separate motion for that.
Right, for the plat, separate motion
Yes,
from the
for the
exception.
exception.
Absolutely. So, Commission, we have an exception followed by a plat for this one. Yep, okay. Okay,
So there's 2 exceptions, right?
Just the one.
Oh, just one?
Just
Okay.
one.
just one exception. Yes, sir. Thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak? Any other additional information be presented? Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the Commission? Okay. I'll
I
enter.
guess I did have something, sorry. Before you was a memo from Emergency Management. It was submitted to us after the agenda went out on this. It just has comments about water lines and fire hydrants, but we do have the condition that we always place on this staff report that if there's enough water flow to support a fire hydrant, that they have to put that in. I forgot to mention that, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, well, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that the Planning Commission hereby approve an exception from Article 50, Section 40.3.I, lot depth to lot width, conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the ENR Rolling Meadows North subdivision, as submitted by the application based on a finding that all 3 criteria for an exception have been met. Pretty good how I got all that.
That was good, yeah.
Done well. Pretty good memory you got there. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jaden. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the Commission? All right. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tystead.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the plat. This is a final plat. Final plat for ENR Rolling Meadows North as outlined in the posted agenda.
Both, isn't it?
Prelim and final.
Preliminary and final.
Preliminary and final. All in one. Thank you. Case DEV-24-080 and 081. Preliminary and final plat. For a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we pass case DEV-24-080 and 081 as presented by staff.
All right. Thank you. Do I have a second? Dan, second? All right. Any discussion? I have a motion and a second on the floor on the preliminary and final plat. All right. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tystead?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than September 25th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. 9 Delta on your agenda. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV-24-085 and 086, a preliminary and final plat for Dodge Addition Number 2 as outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing. Planning staff report.
Good evening, gentlemen. The next case is case DEV 24-085 and 086. This is a preliminary and final plat consideration of a property located at 0000 Cantrell Road. The applicants are proposing to subdivide into 3 separate lots, which would be known as Dodge Addition Number 2. As a note, this property was recently rezoned to RR 2.5, which is why the zoning map reflects a little bit differently. This property does have an accessory structure, which would remain on Lot 3. This case does require an exception for the accessory structure that is on Lot 3. This is accessory structure to remain on the lot without a principal structure. As a note, this exception was previously approved for the original subdivision plat of Dodge Addition for Lot 2. The exception is based upon 3 criteria needed for approval, and those criteria can be found in your staff report. As a reminder, we would need the motion before the disposition of the plats. If the exception were to be approved, it would be in conformance with regulations. Staff is recommending approval with conditions for the plat. The applicant is here to discuss the request further and answer any questions you may have. That being said, I am open to any questions that you may have.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. Does the applicant wish to speak? Please state your name and your address, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Austin Thompson, and I'm with Atlas Lane Consulting. We're located at 14500 Parallel Road, Unit R, Baser, Kansas 66007. And just as staff has stated, the goal for this was part of a rezone that was approved 2 commission meetings ago, where we rezoned from RR5 to RR 2.5. The goal now is we are on the plat phase where we want to split the lots into 3 smaller lots. It'll be about a 21-acre lot and 2 5-acre lots. There also is an exception for the accessory structure building. Again, that staff mentioned that was approved previously on the first edition of Dodge. Also, the owner is here and would like to speak on a few things, if that's okay. But we are also here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Questions? Commission? Okay. All right. Yes, sir. You said the owner would like to speak? Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Devin D. Joseph. I live at 502 2nd Street, Linwood, Kansas. I just kind of wanted to reiterate what Austin said. The exception was granted for that barn to remain on that 28, or to remain on the lot previously with the previous lot split. The barn's been there for about 40 years, so there'd be no impact on neighbors. It's been there for a while. It's currently being used for the development and maintenance of the property. We're working on putting in fencing and doing some clearing, so we've got our equipment and supplies in there for that. So we're just, again, asking for that same exception to be granted for that barn to remain there, so we can keep working on the property.
Any questions for the owner? Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other additional information be presented, Josh?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from the members of the commission? Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception. And this is the exception for the accessory structure to remain on the lot without principal structure conformance and so forth. So that's what the exception is for.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission approve an exception from Article 50, Section 40.3.h, accessory structure to remain on lot without a principal structure, conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the Dodge Addition Number 2 subdivision as submitted by the application, based on a finding that all three criteria for an exception have been met.
I have a motion and I have a second. Does the developer understand did the owner understand the three criteria? Okay, all right. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Thank you, Jaden. Any discussion from the commission? All right, let me call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jess Fink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0 for the exception. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat for Dodge Addition Number 2 as outlined in the posted agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve DEV-24-085 and 086 as presented by staff.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for preliminary and final plat. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jess Fink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than September the 25th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Moving to agenda item 9E is an echo. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV 24-100 and 101, a preliminary and final plat for Thomas Farms, second plat as outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. For this one, there's two exceptions, and then the preliminary and final plat. Staff report, please.
All right, case DEV 24-100 and 101 is a request to replat lots 3 and 7 of the Thomas Farm subdivision into a 6-lot subdivision. So currently these are lots 3 and 7 of the existing Thomas Farms. They are proposing to split off 4 lots that would front on Donahue Road, and then 1 lot on, that's 171st. And then there is an existing house, which is lot 7 of the Thomas Farm subdivision, that they would be taking the back acreage, as you can see there on lot 6, and include that into that parcel with the house on it. This subdivision does require 2 exception requests. The first one being an exception from Article 50, Section 43H, which is a non-conforming structure. So on Lot 5, there is an existing barn that has been there for some time. It was a part of the original plat as well. Since that parcel is now going to be less than 40 acres, it does not comply with the accessory structure without a principal structure regulations and the zoning regulations, so they will need a request for a non-conforming structure exception to be approved. And then there is also an exception request from Article 50, Section 43I, which is the lot depth to lot width. That would be for Lot 6. The frontage is not sufficient enough to accommodate for the depth of that Lot 6, so they will be needing a request from the 1 to, I believe it's 3.5 ratio that they need, or no, it'd be 1 to 4 ratio that they would need for that. I also wanted to point out that Donahue Road is a minimally maintained road. Per previous practice, we do not have a ban on splitting off land on a minimally maintained road, but our staff requirements are that they must place a condition or a statement on the face of the plat saying that Donahue Road is a minimally maintained road, which they have. And then when somebody comes in to pull a permit for any of the lots that would be coming off Donahue Road, they have to sign an affidavit stating that they understand that they are applying for a house permit on a lot that, or on
A road.
tract of land that faces a road that's minimally maintained, and all that accompanying, all that goes with that. So obviously, snow removal, none of that happens on a minimally maintained road, so they have to essentially state they understand that before we will issue a building permit. That being said, we did receive comments from the Fairmont Fire District, and then, as you will see when you walked in, a memo from the Emergency Management Department stating that they do have concerns about Donahue Road being minimally maintained and whether or not fire apparatus would be able to make it down that road. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask.
Do we have the ability to request that they bring Donahue Road up to county standards?
Offsite improvements are extremely hard to accomplish outside of the city.
Well, we've done it before.
Well, you may have done it before, but it's extremely hard to accomplish.
Does that take time? It's hard to accomplish because it takes a long
Well,
time.
it's not just the construction of the road. You would have to maintain the road once the road is constructed, and the road would have to be restricted to a public standard. You can't.
We're talking resources. Okay.
How long a road would it be to get to the subdivision?
I believe it's less than 800 linear feet, I want to say. The frontage in front of theirs, there is another parcel on that corner. So you would also have to account for that dimension as well.
There are a number of houses that are currently on this road. There are three other homes that are right adjoining this area that's being flooded.
But how far would it be to the first hard surface road or county improved road?
So I stand corrected. Each right of way is about 300 linear feet, so that's 1,200. And then I'm guessing on that corner lot, so probably another 400, so 1,600 linear feet
700
to
feet.
accommodate both
That would be developers' expense?
Again, when you're requesting offsite improvements, yeah, it certainly would be at the developer's expense. Then it would have to go through engineering, it would have to be built, and then the county engineer would have to accept it before any building permits would be issued.
Just like we do in an interior subdivision, right?
Interior subdivision roads are a little bit different as they're contained within the boundaries of the plat. When this goes outside, you're asking for improvements that are off-site.
Right, yeah, I agree. I know that, and like I say, we've done it before, so had some nice roads built because of that.
So my question is, does the signed affidavit before is that sufficient for the fire department?
Well, I make the assumption that the fire department currently supplies fire suppression for the three existing homes that are on that road. That has been the practice today, that the people that are building the home understand that this is on a minimally maintained road. Again, I don't know that we have anything from the fire department saying the affidavit is fine for them. The assumption is that they're currently supplying fire protection to people in the same area. 3 different lots, this is a 4-lot subdivision.
Okay.
So we make the assumption that because it's across the street, it doesn't drastically increase the need of additional improvements to provide additional suppression.
Okay. I got
Does
it.
the county have any liability if we approve it on a road like that?
I think the intent of the affidavit is to address that particular issue. So, again, would staff would be the board to tell you what's been done to date on similar roads. I believe the last one that came through was less than a year ago.
I'm reading the note from Fairmont Township about having hydrants that meet code and road improvements to support fire apparatus are completed. What does that imply?
Well, I think it's their intention to have improvements made. They would like to see those improvements made to provide the highest level of fire protection that is possible. It's not uncommon for fire departments to make that statement generally on every subdivision that comes in. Again, staff is neither for or against. We can simply tell you what's been done in the past. As far as intent of the person writing the letter, I can't presume to know that. I just know that those comments are pretty common in every subdivision that comes in.
So I don't remember seeing whether does the rural water district, are they able to support hydrants along the unimproved?
I don't believe they can support at this time.
And simply a hydrant location does not guarantee anything. You can have a hydrant, but if the hydrant doesn't have adequate fire flow, the hydrant doesn't give you benefit.
Right.
That's kind of the issue. And when you're dealing with rural water districts, that's more common than not.
It's in the Consolidated Water District 1 area. They say they have a 12-inch water main along 147th, and it requires a water extension.
He's referring to the memo.
Water District
that there's
1
a
usually
12-inch
has
line.
plenty of
And
water.
it would require,
They're
it would
fine.
require an extension along Donahue Road, and then that's stated in the memo.
Yep.
But as to what level of extension that they would require and whether or not that would support fire flows, we don't know at this time.
So they've verbally agreed in principle that they're going to run water out to the 4, as I read it. Is that
Yes,
correct?
the developer is aware that they will have to run water.
Yep. Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cody Herbster, 4247 Aspen Drive, Baser, Kansas, 66007. There's a lot to go over here. So I was trying to hear everything that was being said in the back. My apologies if I miss anything. Donahue, obviously, minimally maintained. I think we all know that. 1,600 feet is about the distance. As far as water, I have met with the CR, Consolidated Rural Water District 1, went to their board meeting. We do have an agreement in place to extend water from 147th to the extent of this property. It's about 1,600 feet. That would include fire suppression and hydrants. So that is all in place. As far as the road itself and the minimal maintenance, what I've talked with Chief Lingenfelter about is really the weight of the apparatus. Right now, Donahue has essentially asphalt millings on it, which is not obviously up to standard, right, of what they would want to see. Their recommendation to me was that I meet the federal low-volume gravel roadway standard. There isn't a gravel roadway standard for the county, but that is what Fairmont Township has requested, and I will meet that standard. So from that aspect, Fairmont Township is happy with that standard. I'll meet that standard. Consolidated Rural Water, we have an agreement in place already. That work will be done by them, hydrants installed all the way to the extent of the western boundary on Donahue.
I think they're waiting on us in our vote tonight to determine the final plat with you. I think that's what I read, right?
Of course,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we're going to give it to you verbally, but it all depends on the county.
Right, and it's actually the opposite, because I need to buy the property and I have to pay them, because I'm obviously paying for these upgrades. The rural water district is not doing so.
Right.
So
It's on you.
it's on me, and so, but I have to own the property in order to write them a check, right? And so getting through this process is step number one. So
Okay.
that's why it's a verbal agreement and not something right.
How would you improve the road, though? You said you would be able to improve the road to low-density ground. How do you do that?
It's essentially an all-weather road, which is what fire departments require on private property.
Okay.
We have a
Is this thing on? Yeah, okay. We have a couple of issues here. One is private improvements in a public road right of way. That would have to be addressed through the Public Works Office, and then maintenance of said improvements after the initial construction. Again, I don't think it's the county's intent to take over more road and provide more maintenance. So that should be laid out there for the commission. You should understand that. Now, if the road is brought up to a standard acceptable, then likely the county could take over that maintenance. But as it stands today, there is no intention to do that. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Herbster, a low-volume gravel road essentially is an all-weather road. You see that a lot of times for temporary fire protection on a large building site. You'll see a 150-foot by 25-foot gravel with roadstone, typically 3 inches or more, that can span that subgrade that's typically pretty loose so that you can get fire apparatus back on the site.
Okay.
But it certainly is not a road standard, essentially not intended for everyday traffic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, the issue becomes both the construction and the maintenance of that road. And again, I don't want to mislead the commission and say that Public Works has recommended these improvements and that they'll maintain them, because that certainly is not the case.
No.
Okay. Commission, questions for the applicant? Questions for the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Hershberg. Appreciate it. Yep. Thank you. Any other additional information to be presented?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, Amy. Any questions or comments from the members of the commission? Discussion.
I did have one question about, I think we're done with the Donahue Road, right?
Yep.
The second one refers to the lot width and depth. As you look down, as I see this, those properties that indent, for lack of a better term, into, all have driveways, correct?
Are you talking about the properties to this kind of the south portion of it?
Yeah.
Yes, they all have existing driveways.
Okay. And they're off which road again? 147. So is lot 6 then going to have a entrance there?
So lot 6 is already built out. That front portion is. So there's a house there. It has its own drive, everything. They're just expanding to include that back. So was it about 11 acres with the front?
They're absorbing into a larger tract to create a bigger tract, but the house and the access points are already.
So all the access points meet the regulations? I mean, the distance
they met
apart?
At the time that they were created, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all.
It's good.
I have.
It's good. It's good. All right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay.
Your turn.
All right. All right. This is for an exception. I'll entertain a motion for an exception.
I move that we approve the exception for Article 50, Section 43H, non-conforming structure conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the Thomas Farm number 2nd plat subdivision as submitted by the application. And my screen just went out. Based on the finding of all 3 criterias for the exception has been met.
I second.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Doug. Any discussion from the commission? I have a motion and a second to approve the exception as stated by Steve and in your agenda. No discussion. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Steve Skeet,
Yes.
Dan Clemens,
Yes.
and Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right. The first exception is carried by a vote of 7-0. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the second exception, which is the lot depth to lot width conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulation.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the exception for Article 50, Section 43I, lot depth to width, lot depth conformance with the zoning and subdivision requirements for the Thomas Farms second plat subdivision as submitted by the application based on finding that all three criteria of the exception has been met.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion on the floor for the lot width exception? Okay, I'll entertain, I've got I'm sorry. I'll call roll. Now I'm getting confused. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Steph Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
All right, the motion is carried for the lot width depth exception. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the plat, the preliminary and final plat for Thomas Farms, second plat as outlined in the posted agenda, case DEV 24-100 and 101.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the plat for DEV-24-101 or 100 and 101 as presented by staff and discussed.
I have a motion on the floor to approve the preliminary and final plat. I have a second. And thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commission? Okay. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0 for the plat. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than September the 25th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Okay. We're down to 14 more to go. We're doing all right. All right. At this time, we're on 9F, as in Foxtrot of your agenda. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case DEV 24-102 and 103, a preliminary and final plat for Smith Ridge as outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. Planning staff report.
All right, good evening, gentlemen. This case is case DEV-24-102 and 103. This is a preliminary and final plat consideration of a property located at 22027 Toganoxie Drive. The applicants are proposing to subdivide their land into 5 separate lots, which would be known as Smith Ridge. This property does have a single-family residence, which would remain on Lot 5, and an accessory structure that would remain on Lot 4. This case does require 2 exceptions. One is for the accessory structure to remain on a lot without a principal structure, and that is for Lot 4. The other exception is for the lot depth to lot width requirement for Lot 5, which exceeds the 1-to-1 ratio. The exception is based upon 3 criteria needed for approval, and those can be found within your staff report. As a reminder, we need a motion for the exception before the disposition of the plats. If the exceptions were to be approved, it would be in conformance with regulations. As a note, there is in your packets, we had received correspondence and email from a neighbor that had raised concerns about the increased traffic flow that would take place there if the plat was approved. Staff's recommendation is approval with conditions for the plat. The applicant is here to discuss the request further and to answer any questions you may have. That being said, I am open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Joe Herring, surveying 315 North 5th Street. Staff covered it. Again, the exception for the accessory structure is much like the other ones you approved tonight. It does house farming equipment. These tracts are off of a larger family farm and will continue to house his tractors for the farming operation of the land to the north and on these tracts until they're built. The other exception to width to depth, that is a corner lot, irregular shaped. You see it quite frequently on these corner lots that you have to get that exception. There's just too much road frontage there. Other than that, here to answer any questions.
The building structure, Joe, I think it's on the corner lot, right?
No, the residence is on the corner lot.
Yeah.
The building is on the lot to the west.
Okay.
It sits closer to the north
Okay.
about right in there.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm sorry. I meant to say the resident.
The resident
is on the
lot 5.
corner lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 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 All right. Questions for the applicant? Commission, questions for the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
Okay, so we're looking at two exceptions, right? We have an exception for the lot width and the depth that I understand, and we have an exception for the accessory structure on where it's placed. And then we have a motion for a preliminary and final plat as we're looking at right here tonight, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions or discussions from the commission before we get started? Okay, well, in that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception for the lot depth to lot width conformance with the zone and planning of these lots.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission hereby approve an exception from Article 50, Section 40.3.I, lot depth to lot width, conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the Smith Ridge subdivision as submitted by the application based on a finding that all three criteria for the exception has been met.
A motion and a second. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Doug.
That's exception 2, right?
Yes.
That's the first exception.
It's Section 5 as you're looking at it on the map. It's the one that, he has his cursor.
Does the applicant understand the exceptions that have to be met? The three exceptions that have to be met?
Criteria?
Yeah, the criteria.
The exceptions that we requested?
Yep. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion? Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Alan Stewart?
Yes.
Jess Fink?
Yes.
Doug Tystead?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
Okay. The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0 on the lot width and depth. I'll entertain a motion to approve the exception for the accessory structure to remain on the lot without principal structure conformance with zoning and planning.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission approve an exception from Article 50, Section 40.3.H, accessory structure to remain on lot without a principal structure conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations for the Smith Ridge subdivision as submitted by the application based on a finding that all three criteria for an exception have been met.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jaden, second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the floor?
I guess my only discussion on this is, since the accessory structure is in Lot 4, and it appears that the subdivision that they're planning to develop on all 5 of the lots, one is Lot 5 is already developed. Is the structure going to pass to the new owner? Is that our issue?
Ownership would not be your issue. If you approve that exception, it's up to the owner what he chooses to do with that particular structure.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Call roll. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0 for the exception. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat for Smith Ridge as outlined in the posted agenda, case DEV 24-102 and 103.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve preliminary and final plat for Smith Ridge, DEV-24-102 and 103, as presented and discussed.
I have a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat as stated in the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dan, thank you. All right, I'll call roll. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Any discussion on the motion?
One question
Yes, sir.
to staff. What is our responsibility concerning the neighbors' concerns?
So currently our regulations don't require traffic studies to be performed for plats. Staff can request it, but due to the extent or the number of lots being platted here, that request is not made. As far as the access, all accesses that are granted for this subdivision have to comply with our access management policy before we will grant them an entrance permit. So we already have, distances between driveways, spacing between roadways accounted for in our access management policy. And it would obviously have to comply.
Thank you.
It's good. It's a good question. Okay. It's
And
good.
for personal edification, would there ever be anything that we could do concerning this email? I mean, a public safety issue.
It's a perceived public safety issue. You could ask for additional studies to be accomplished, but given the density of the development, essentially 5 lots, in reality, that's less than, at best, 8 trips per day on an arterial road. The impacts are negligible. However, the geometry of the access components, which is the concern, are governed by the access management policy. So you're assuming your policy is adequate to accommodate the issue.
Okay, well, I just want to make certain, as Dan said, that we're considering the issue within our capabilities.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's on the record. It's good. It's a good question. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. A motion and a second, and discussion is over. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stewart.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Steve Skeet.
Yes.
Dan Clemens.
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Yes.
The motion is carried by a vote of 7-0 for the preliminary and final plat. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than September 25th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Courthouse. This time we're at 9G as in golf in your agenda. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider case DEV 24-110, a rezoning request from RR 2.5 to R143 as outlined in the posted agenda. This does require a public hearing. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. There'll be a little timer up here on the stage if anybody wants to go over that. Once that little buzzard rings, don't make me be the bad person and tell you, please walk away. We are no longer hearing what you have to discuss after your 3 minutes are over. Planning staff report.
Right. The next case is case DEV-24-110. This is a request to rezone their property located at 16476 Leavenworth Road from RR 2.5 to R143, which is 1 acre lot. The future land use of this property is residential, 3 units per acre. The applicant is proposing to split off approximately 1.5 acres of vacant ground for his son. The rest of the property that has an existing house and accessory structures having approximately over 3 acres per the concept plan that was submitted by the applicant. The staff reviewed this request based off the 7 gold factors, which is needed in a rezoning request. Those factors and analysis of the factors can be found on page 2 of your staff report. Staff would typically recommend denial of a request that does not conform with the future land use map. However, staff is recommending approval of the request for the following reasons. The requested use is less dense than what is identified on the future land use designation. And Basel, which is the nearest city, is located less than a mile to the east of the property. But we are unsure of the location of where the nearest sewer connection is for that. Yep. So there have been neighbors that has been calling in about the request. However, neither opposing or in favor of the request. Is more informational as far as what the property owner is wanting to do. There was a neighbor that called in earlier today that he had concerns with due to like the proximity of his residence and where the building site would be for the proposed lot. The applicant is here for questions. With that being said, I am open to your questions.
Questions for the staff? Okay. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. Okay. Upon opening this public comment portion of the hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition, please give your name and your full address each time you begin to speak. It's necessary for a public hearing to be recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward?
Jeremy Ressler, 18320 Prairie View Road, Tonganoxie, Kansas.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You guys have any questions for me?
Questions for the applicant from the commission?
So as this property stands now, we could put an accessory home on the property without splitting it. I would prefer to split it and separate the house from the property. That's the main reason. And there is also close proximity of current 1 acre lots.
Yeah, based on what I'm looking at for your picture.
Go back one so we can see.
How does your neighbors feel about that?
He's talking about right here.
Well, to the south and the west, you also have some
Okay,
1
so
acres
across the
there,
road
so-
to the south.
Well, yeah, south and west.
Okay. Thanks. You can go back to the concept.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Everybody understand what we're doing? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Guys have questions or ask you?
I will in just a second, sir. Hang on just a second. Okay. We will now hear from those individuals present wishing to speak in favor of the request. We'll now hear from those individuals present wishing to speak in favor of the request. Okay. We'll now hear from those individuals present wishing to speak in opposition of the request. In opposition of the request. Please state your name and your address, sir.
Rick Summers, 16426 Leavenworth Road, place right next door. I think the house might be a little close to me. And I thought we had to have 5 acres out there and 300 foot wide, or 2.5 acres and 300 footage on the front of our property to enter them.
As I understand, that's 2.5 acres, and I think the 2.5 acres is 200 feet. Is that right? 200
That's
feet.
correct.
That was approved with the future land use map. That was approved. What was the actual date on that?
Now, I might not be up to date,
Yeah.
but I don't think an acre and a half lots are suited in our area. And what's it going to do to the value of my house? Putting a house right on top of it, basically. I could have bought that piece of property prior to, had I known you could split off the land, and I'd have took the land. So it seems like the last 30 years in Leavenworth County, everything changes after the fact, and then they do what I want to do later, but I still paid for what they made me do. And example, when I had a place over on County Road 6, I think this gentleman or his relatives surveyed it, but I had to put in a tube across there, which the dirt man told them they don't want the tube hitting the bridge. That's why they had a creek there. Well, when they come back and redid the bridge, they buried my tube. And all of a sudden, we could have driveway within 50 feet of the bridge, which I couldn't, so I had to buy more property. So that's just why I'm arguing this. Guys, do what you got to do, but there is no sewers out there, so I was kind of wondering on where they get the septic system, or
Okay. That's another valid point.
Our sanitary code requires only an acre of land in order to be able to have a septic system, so the R143 would be entitled to septic.
A septic?
It's the smallest lot that you can go to and have a septic system. Anything less than that requires public sewer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And are there any, and what are the distance, the offset distance in from the property line to be able to build the
15 feet is the side yard setback.
50 feet? Or
15.
15 feet.
From the property line, 15.
Thank you.
Driveway, though.
You're talking about the driveway or the structure?
The structure?
Yes, 15 feet.
Thank you.
I'm good.
How about driveway in?
Yeah, we noted that. Sorry.
So the driveway.
Thank you, sir.
Is typically done during the planning process. I mean, however, whenever we had the pre-application meeting, there was discussions as far as them having a shared driveway, which would be this driveway right here to gain access to the lot.
Oh, yeah.
So they would not have a driveway coming off the lot accessing Leavenworth Road, other than the one that's existing?
Negative, sir. And the reason for that is because the access management policy or access management regulation, since this is a low volume collector road, they would have to have 200 feet in between each of the entrances. And from the neighbor's entrance to the existing driveway, right there is roughly about 230 feet. So based off of that, they would not be able to put an entrance in there. It would either be a variance situation or it would have to be the shared access.
Okay, state that again, because I want to make sure we fully understood that. The only way that that lot can be developed for future living, which is the exception that they're asking for here, is that the driveway would be used by what we're currently looking at, not
Yes.
an additional
It would be-
driveway added.
It would be a shared entrance that is with the first lot.
So, in short, Chairman, this driveway, the way you see it, would be eliminated. There'd be a single access point for both lots, which is permissible
Yep.
and happens all the time across the
Yep,
county.
I'm just making sure that that's what we're
Except
talking about.
down the
Yeah.
road.
So instead of
then
having,
you
so instead of having two access points, you're limited to a singular access point that would meet the spacing requirement of the access policy.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So we could leave it at what? It's a 2.5, RR 2.5. So we could leave it at the 4.8 acres. And they could build an accessory structure in there, a house in there.
They could build an accessory structure on the lot as it stands today, one more house on that lot. But his intention is to divide the property so there's a legal description with the house that he builds to create another buildable lot.
Properly document it.
Right.
That's what he's doing, properly documenting it, making it official property line
That's
with
right.
that structure.
But then we also have to have an easement for the driveway, right?
When it goes through the plating process, keeping in mind that at this
Right,
point.
we're rezoning, but we know this will probably come our way at some point in the future.
Typically, how that's handled is the easement and the joint access easement would be accommodated through the plating process.
Okay.
Oh, I am. I'm going to get to you in just a second, ma'am. I saw you get up. Hang on. Commission is still asking questions of the staff. Give me just a second here. Okay. Okay. All right, ma'am, please. We're still talking in opposition of the request.
My name is Amy Day. I live at 16569 Leavenworth Road, so just southwest of this plot. I am opposed to it. Like the gentleman before me said, we moved out in the county like 30 years ago. And one of the reasons we moved out here, especially out in this rural area, was because the county was more restrictive in regards to their development and that they appreciated the rural and agricultural atmosphere that it has. I'm afraid that I'm already dealing with the negative impact of the Amber Meadows subdivision that is exactly right next to me and all the traffic that goes through there as well. And I'm concerned of the negative impact that this will also have on my property value as the Amber Meadows has had. I also feel that it may open the door for the land next to it. And I'm concerned that if you allow this 1 acre plot here, that it would open the door to allow rezoning of the land that is directly across from me. And that will definitely have a huge negative impact on my property, especially considering you don't do traffic studies, which it has been horrific since Amber Meadows went in. So that's my
Okay. Okay. Questions for her? Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals present wishing to speak in opposition?
My 3 minutes up.
Yes, sir. Any other information to be presented?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Public comment portion of this public hearing is now closed. Kansas law allows for a petition protesting the decision of the Planning Commission to be filed. That petition must be filed within 14 calendar days after the date of the public hearing. Additional information on filing of a protest petition can be obtained from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Questions, comments from the Commission? So we're talking about it's a rural district area, RR 2.5. That's what I'm understanding, RR 2.5?
Yes, sir.
Right. It has nearly 5 acres, looking to split off 1.43, almost an acre and a half, if I'm not mistaken. 1.54, an acre and a half, a little over an acre and a half, from his 5-acre lot. Doesn't quite meet the 2.5 acres, but that's what he's here requesting for the exception, a rezoning request.
But the future land use is 1 acre, or
It's
actually 3 units per acre.
Yeah, 3 units per acre.
Future land use.
Yeah, they're inside that.
A smaller scale kind of example of some of the other cases of bigger developments that we had, where I think it's an opportunity to put pressure on the cities to be involved when it's that close. It's also probably an example of what we're trying to get away from, which was the spot zoning. So I just think it's intriguing in that regard. It doesn't fit a lot of our criteria, which is why they're asking for an exception, but I think it could open a door for other possible scenarios.
Yeah, could you go back one again, please?
Yeah, your point's vacant. I mean, that's very valid. That's what Miss Amy Day was concerned about is,
And allowing that type of density to happen in the county, but it's not being married with any of the upgrades of amenities and infrastructure leads to problems that the county, through not doing certain traffic studies and things like this, isn't equipped to handle. But yet we're not also using that to drive pressure to the cities to be involved in that type of advancement.
yeah, I believe, what did he, how close is that to the city? I know it's rural, but it's real close to
It's more than 660 feet, which is
The criteria.
Yeah, which is the criteria for, in order for us to send it to the city. But it's outside of that mark.
Oh, it's outside of the, yeah, okay.
You can see the baser boundary right
Yeah.
on the right side of the screen here.
I'm not sure they have sewers out there.
They don't.
They don't. I was pretty sure they did.
Yeah. Septic.
Sewers
septic.
aren't closed, and they're not going to bring it out there for one lot, that's for sure, or even 3 lots.
Yeah, it's extremely expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
John, with regards to the 1 acre minimum on the septics, that's something that's kind of undulated in the past. It was at 2.5, but then the state went back to 1. Is that
1968 to 1998, 63 to 1998, it was 1 acre for septic tanks and 1 acre minimum lot sizes. And then in 1998, it changed until we got to where we're at today. So yes, it has went back and forth. The minimum acreage, I believe that changed in 2000, if I remember reading that correctly, that they dropped it back down to 1 acre.
That's state?
From 2.5. No, that's local.
They stopped it because there was a lot of problems with septics on 1 acres, and a lot of it, and they weren't engineered systems. So I think that was part of the problem. Now they're engineered systems, so I think they're...
Anything on that smaller parcel requires
Yeah,
an
they can
engineered
make it on
system,
those
yes.
Smaller parcels.
Yeah, and
I'm not sure I agree with it, but
it's pretty closely controlled and engineered and by our good office staff right here. I know very well how that's done.
Well, it's designed by PE and installed and inspected.
Yep.
If it's maintained, it should be adequate.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the staff?
No, sir.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion on this request. The motion is a rezoning request from RR 2.5 to R-1 43 as outlined in the posted agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve case number DEV-24-110, 2024 Twin Venture rezone, as presented by staff and as under the current regulations.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the rezoning request. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Second it, Jeff? I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion to approve the rezone request. Valid concerns brought to the table, valid concerns brought on the table from the public. Any discussion? Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning request. We'll call roll. Jaden Bailey?
No, citing character in the neighborhood.
Okay. Alan Stork?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
No.
And justification?
Neighborhood, and it's doesn't meet the driveways. You're already getting into exceptions before you even get started.
Steve Rosenthal?
No.
No?
Same reasons.
Okay. All right. The motion is carried by a vote of 4-3. To approve the rezoning request. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than October the 2nd, 2024 meeting. The commission agenda is posted on the Leavenworth County website and is available for public viewing. At this time, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right. The meeting is adjourned. We'll begin the Board of Zoning Appeals in 5 minutes.
I get to leave, right?
We'll start at, it's 7:07 now, we'll start at 7:15.
We're going to have to separate.
I mean, I know it's.
Alan, you're gone.
Comfortable with answering their questions.
You're gone, buddy.
Going out again.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's going out there. Next one.
Did you get thrown off this time?
Oh, so it was approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Take care.
Yep.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, no, it's part of the decision.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Francine is beating the hell out of a lot of people. Louisiana. Wow, that's a big one.
I'm sorry, I still have to dismiss one person? Yeah. Oh my gosh, Dan standing there, Dan, you gotta go.
Oh, wait a minute.
If you want to stay.
Say what?
There was a guy who used to be on here named Rocky Hipple. There's a bunch of the big turnover out when I started. And David Van Paris gave us like a printout of like how to word different things. So in between the meetings, he came in
Yep.
pretty tight
It's coming next, yeah.
on everything.
Well, actually,
really?
the only one
So
in-
we came in, so when it came time to make a motion, we just sat here.
You just said here, you read them.
He had already worded out how to read it, and he had every word in there you could put in there. You like doing it, so we just let him do it.
We don't actually
Yeah.
provide a recommendation.
He
We
also
just give
bought-
the Board of Zoning Appeals
He had every,
facts of the case.
the meeting's like a little binder. And he had like several 3 to 4 inch binders stacked.
Oh, is that
This was
right?
like all of our last year of meetings.
Oh, so he could
Get
go
all
back.
our agendas. If
Yeah.
anything came up, he'd pull out his books and flip through and find the agenda so we could
Good grief.
state how, whatever. He was entertaining.
Yeah, no, we haven't received anything.
I figured there wouldn't be, I mean, it's just the variances, you know. So the staff will make some kind of comments about
We'll present
the
the
issues.
case.
I don't even know what I.
That last one, there weren't houses right across the street.
Yeah.
And right behind it.
Right.
It's
At
like,
1 acre.
If I don't read anything out of it,
It's,
the technicalities of.
you're that close.
they don't like it, but, you know.
About 100 yards from
Used to
this,
have
800
30
feet
feet
from
of
the
road.
city.
Yeah.
That was the minimum
I
requirement.
mean, it's coming.
Like 20 approximately.
Yeah.
So at the time that the boundaries of your
I,
parcel.
you know, and I understand, I guess if I'd bought land 20 years ago, I'd
So
feel
now,
different, but,
the status of that parcel, we have to consider whether or not it was created.
It's just
in
what-
compliance with the regulations at the time.
I don't know.
If it wasn't,
I'm-
we either have to get you into conformance with today's requirements,
One of
or
those
we go the
things.
variance route.
Yeah.
So-
Which is a little farther out, the subdivision was across the street.
The variance, well, of course, I can't replace the house usually with damage.
I mean, I can understand why they're saying no for the neighborhood. The guy's house was awful close next to
It was, yeah.
Never hurts to make your case.
Well, exactly, I'm not sure exactly how to make a case, but basically, nothing's changed since I lived there.
Well,
I
maybe,
don't know if I quite, you guys have obviously understand the difference between variance, non-compliance.
Yeah, actually, what you wrote in your narrative was really great. You just want to present kind of the bullet points of what you
So,
wrote
yeah,
down.
you know, I've lived there, I haven't changed anything for
Mhm.
5 years in the house.
Mhm.
I just want an option to have to get a building permit.
right, and I think that's probably the best thing to say, so.
I'll just refer the fact I've talked to staff about
Mhm.
any technicalities about these non-compliance parts of this. I know, remember specifically that it had to have some, it had to be unique for the.
That's probably his
That's the very first
So in your
criteria.
opinion, it is unique.
It is.
I've commented about that. Why don't you, oh no, Alex, I can see the board better.
That's really the hardest one to overcome. If you can overcome that one, the rest of them normally are.
You ever sat in the back of this room?
Hardship to me.
All these microphones and that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
loud.
Which is another one of the 5 statutory criteria.
Oh, is that right?
The,
So they
the
can
one
hear it
that's
all
most,
back
the most difficult to attain is.
So they can hear it back there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, you're.
Over there, I'll have to do that.
Yes. Well, we support that it's a unique,
It's like we can
and if they
barely
ask
hear
us
John
to say that.
behind that little makeshift wall.
That's.
Yeah.
They can hear him pretty good.
Right.
I'm surprised, that's probably the boards back there, so we don't get the.
There's a difference in
That's-
exception.
that's
and
why we
variances,
don't get any,
which is, we can't
any
really
feedback
speak for or
or-
against an exceptions and variances, but we can answer the technical questions if they're asked of us.
He's checking his mic and thumped his pen on it. I'm sure they heard that really well.
Yours is the last item.
I know, but there are a couple more.
Just one of
One
them.
more before you, yeah.
Bandstand.
Yep.
You gotta do rock, paper, scissors out there?
No, he just said I'll stay. I'm like, good, I'll leave. I got stuff to do, so.
Anybody else got allergies?
Got cold.
Ah.
Oops.
Creating a big palatial parking lot.
So they're finally gonna move over to that house?
Well, they're paving that area. Yeah.
When's that couple gonna move?
I don't know. I've heard nothing on it.
Because the verbal agreement, because then when he's, county had a working. Well, Douglas, just you and me against the world, guy.
I guess. Well, let's rule.
Here, you and me hit the gavel?
Yeah, let's rule. We can turn the county upside down.
When I was a kid, I rented a house over there. I didn't, that's the first I've ever heard of that agreement.
This is the 1910 one, right?
Josh, Commissioner's asking you a question.
This is the 1910 one? It's been there since 1910 or something like that?
I'm pretty sure both of them are.
Well, the other one was 1960, I said.
Yeah,
thought.
I think this is the one that was the oldest
Steve
one.
and
Alan?
Alan
But,
can leave,
yes,
I believe.
that's Steve.
Oh,
I think
you
you
did.
only have one.
Yeah, Steve
We only
Ski.
needed one, but I think they both left.
I think they both took off. I think they both thought.
So four makes
No,
five.
Steve Skeet said that Alan had told him out in the hallway that he was going to come back,
Yeah.
but I don't see him.
I thought I had to listen. I thought I was told I had to tell two people to leave, so we told two people to leave.
Robert Owens was still here, but since he wasn't, that's why you only needed one.
Okay, well that's my fault because I
So
told
we can do it with 6, can we?
You can do it with
Now
6.
it's leadership.
we can do with 6, right?
Yeah, we can do it.
You can do it with 6.
You just can't go over 7.
Right.
All right. Well, let's just drive on with the 6 because
And you'll have to vote.
I'll have to vote.
You
Okay,
don't get out of it.
Are you prepared for that?
I'm prepared. I just can't make the motion. Are y'all prepared for the motion?
Yeah, you can make a motion.
You want it now?
These two are well versed in.
No, I think you can make a
Yeah.
motion.
Hey, I used Robert Owens' package. I was thinking about bringing my computer and reading it from there, but
You have a cheat sheet on the motion.
All right.
You're reading off the stuff.
All right. So
I don't
the
have them here, but
So the Board of County Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, now open, roll call. Let me call the roll real quick. Jaden Bailey.
Present.
Alan Stork, he's out. We told him to go home. William Gutschalk, not here tonight. Jeff Spink.
Here.
Doug Tysted.
here.
Steve Skeet, we told go home. Dan Clemens.
Here.
And Steve Rosenthal.
Here.
And Marcus Major. All right, so let the record show 2, 4, 6. We have 6 and 6 voting members, including myself. Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
We caught him.
Yeah.
It was this close.
So you don't have to
Scratch
you have-
that.
You have to scratch.
Let the record show we have 7. I was trying to take care of you. Okay. Steve Skeet is back. So we have 7. 6 voting. All right. Okay. Since you just walked in, we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda, and I have a second. I'll call roll. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
All right, thank you. 6-0, approving the agenda. Regular agenda, flip to the tab. All right, we're at item 2A. The Leavenworth County Board of Zoning Appeals will now consider case DEV 24-104, variance request from Article 5, Section 4, road frontage requirement for RR 2.5 of the zoning and subdivision regulations. This requires a public hearing. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Planning staff report.
All right, case DEV 24014 is a request for a variance from Article 5, Section 4, road frontage requirement for the RR 2.5 zoning district, which is 200 feet. The application is for the property located at 26117 Wolcott Road. This property has quite a history. There is a house that currently sits on the parcel. It was built in the 1910s, so it's been there for a significant amount of time. However, sometime in the 1960s, the current configuration of the lot was created via a deed. However, at that time, the minimum road frontage for parcels being created was 30 feet of road frontage. This parcel only has approximately 20 feet of road frontage, so it was not compliant with the regulations at this time. The applicants were made aware that since this is a non-compliant parcel, no building permits would be issued for this parcel. Say if the house were damaged or destroyed more than 50%, they couldn't pull a new single-family permit to repair it or replace it for another house to be there. So they are requesting at this time a variance from that section in order to be able to pull building permits for that house. So they are in attendance here today. If you have any questions, please let them know, or if you have questions for me, please ask.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the staff before we get started? Okay. Upon opening this public comment portion of the hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item, upon recognition, will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since this public hearing and it's being recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward? We finally get to you, ma'am. You've been able to be here for almost 2 hours with us finally to get to you.
That's all right. My name is Cheryl Shalop, 771 Michigan, Leavenworth. And we're requesting the variance if the house were to be destroyed by a tornado or such, that we could rebuild.
Okay. Okay, that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
Okay.
Very
All right.
simple.
Hang on, don't go anywhere. Questions for the applicant from the commission?
So you're not planning on building any more structures?
No more structures.
Okay.
Just if something were to happen to the home.
You're concerned that if disaster strikes,
Correct.
that you would then be told that you cannot build in there because of access.
Because of the
current regulations.
Current regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That cleared up.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of these through the years.
That cleared up my issue.
Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor or opposition of this request? In favor? I was referring to you, sir. You could come up and just state your name and say, I'm in favor. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other additional information, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Amy. All right. Public comment portion of this public hearing is now closed. Any questions or comments from the commission? I think we cleared it up a little while ago with the okay. I'll entertain a motion on this request. Case DEV 24-104, a variance request from Article 5, Section 4, road frontage requirement.
Chairman, I'll move to approve DEV-104, the variance for road frontage, according to the staff recommendations and the golden factors.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the floor? All right. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
And Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
Let the record show the motion is carried by a vote of 6-0. Thank you, ma'am. You guys are good for the variance. Thank you. Thanks for enjoying the long 2 hours before we got to you. You've been a great sport. You've been a great sport. Okay. That's right. That's right. The Leavenworth County Board of Zoning Appeals will now consider case DEV 24-109, a variance of request from Article 5, Section 4, road frontage requirement of RR5 of the zoning and subdivision requirements. Planning staff, give staff report.
DEV 24-109, again, is a variance request from the road frontage of the RR5 zoning district, so a minimum of 300 feet of road frontage. The parcel in question is 12042 258th Street. This property, very similar circumstances to the previous case. It was built out in as early as I can find, the 1940 plus, but I think it was like 1913 when it was built. Sometime and I think we actually figured it out in 1967. The owners at that time had separated this out via deed. Again, at the time, the minimum requirement, I actually think, was 150 feet in 67. It clearly does not meet that requirement, so the options are either they get more land and meet the road frontage now, or apply for a variance. Again, very similar circumstances. This is not something that the owner created. It is unique to this specific parcel and such forth. The applicant is here in attendance if you would like to ask any questions or
One quick interjection. We've met with the applicant a number of times and counseled him to bring this before you. He certainly has a unique condition, and there are a handful of these throughout the county. So he's doing this at staff request to accommodate the same issue that your previous action accommodated.
Yes.
So where is
well, if you look to the upper left of the photo, you'll see right at the end of the platted road right away.
Yep.
He has about 3/4 of that platted road right away. It's not a lateral line up it. It's just, I think it's 20 feet or a little less than 20 feet.
I think actually 18.
Yeah.
Am I looking at it correctly that they actually have a shared driveway?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
That's because the road ends
Right.
where it does. So
Right, yeah.
And if you look at aerial photos, again, far back I could go as 1940. That house has been there. That drive has been in that configuration since that time. I believe the house to the north was newer than this house, so they accessed off of that drive whenever it was built.
Yeah, so that, to quickly answer that question, the platted road right-of-way is longer than the improved roadway. So that's the purpose of that additional drive that you see there. At some point in time, it was put in.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay. So once again, this is a variance approval, a variance of the current, road frontage requirement. Okay, this requires a public hearing. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Upon opening this public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item, upon recognition, will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. Will the applicant please come forward? And sir, let me say thank you, too, for sticking around all night for a couple hours of getting to it.
No problem. So my name is Galen Pittman, and I live at 12042 258th Street. And yes, that county road on that corner just dead ends at my property. So I've lived there for 35 years, I think. So I'm in the same situation as the other person. I mean, if it was destroyed by a fire or something, I couldn't rebuild it. I couldn't get a building permit. And I haven't really done anything to the property since I've lived there since the mid-'80s. I guess it's been 35, almost 40 years. So yes, I mean, it is a hardship on me if I had to consider some more frontage than 20 feet, which is all I have now. And now, I think the house is, I think 1940 is about right from what I understand, at least that old. So I haven't changed anything. All the buildings are the same since I've lived there. So I'm just hoping that, get a variance so that I have an option for, the house is like 75 years old. It probably is needing some repair or even replacement, but obviously I couldn't get a building permit today unless I get a variance, unless I were to comply with a whole lot of frontage, which I don't have. I don't know. I talked to staff about it. So they seem to be in support of what I was trying to accomplish.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Any
sir.
questions?
No, let me just ask you this. How did you know to reach out to us to start this process? I mean, you've been there all this time. What drove you to?
Well, I just simply, I thought, well, if I were to try to maybe rebuild the house and try to get a building permit, so I just simply called the planning commission a while back and said, and then I asked about it and said, well, I knew about some of these long I didn't know how much
Yeah.
frontage I actually had. It turns out I got about 20 feet because it's just half the right-of-way, which is only a 40-foot wide county road, apparently. So that's one of the things, or now 60s, I guess, now. So, no, I just simply called and asked about it and said, well, you're not in compliance if you wanted you couldn't get a building permit, so I haven't. I just want that option to be able to do that if I need it. I like to live there for the rest of my life. I don't want a developer to do anything else with it other than just try to maybe replace the house if it needs it. And it's sort of getting to the point where maybe it does.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's the goodness of our planning and zone staff, getting you to this point. So that way it's documented.
Right. And
right?
So, just like if you do get a variance, that's a permanent thing.
Yeah.
Goes with the property, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what I'm asking for today.
Well, thanks for your time, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Any questions? All right. Thanks, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming, and thanks for doing the right thing. Thanks for calling up here and asking. Okay. All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposition to this request? Any additional information to be presented? Staff, you've done a great job tonight. I can't thank you enough. The public comment portion of this public hearing is now closed. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the commission? I'll entertain a motion to approve this request or deny this request for the variance.
I'll make a motion that we approve case DEV-24-109, variance Pittman Road frontage, as presented by staff, factors as well.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any other discussion on the floor? All right, let me roll call. Jaden Bailey?
Yes.
Jeff Spink?
Yes.
Doug Tysted?
Yes.
Steve Skeet?
Yes.
Dan Clemens?
Yes.
Steve Rosenthal?
Yes.
The motion is carried by a vote of 6-0. With that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
But, Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, I want to add to your comments about the staff, the completeness and the effort that they put into the packages makes it easy for us, and I also appreciate their working with the community like they do to help them to understand the requirements and work their way through it. It makes our job a lot easier. So I just wanted to compliment the staff.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second.
Thank you. Thank you.
And being that Mr. Tysted recognized that, and for all of us, we can't thank enough because this really is a great packet, right down to all the motions and the exceptions and everything are all there for us. I really appreciate that. And being that Mr. Tysted brought that up, so I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
I will now move to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?